Welcome back for the second part of recreating Larry Horsfield's Dawn Patrol from the Sinclair user. The adventure that he wrote to demonstrate the use of PAWS that we're going to rewrite in DAAD using DAAD Builder. So the first part he talks about adding messages to the adventure. Now in DAAD we can, or especially in DAAD Ready, we can use these directly in line, so we can write message and then have the message in quotes straight after that, and the compiler will deal with adding that into the message table. Or we can do it exactly the same way here and add messages to the message table. So we'll do it that way round this time. So user messages, I'm going to add our first message. First message is the door is. Second message is closed. Message after that with a full stop, and the message after that is open with a full stop. Add a message. Next message is the door swings open. Followed by you close the door. Which shuts with a bang. Another message which is just simply you can't. Another message which is you can't leave the castle on foot. And then we have this one here, which is the sentry stopping you from progressing into the castle. Okay, so that's the 7 messages from the game. Next thing is to change the vocabulary in the vocabulary section. So we'll follow this again exactly the same sort of way as they're doing it. So let's go to the vocabulary editor. So there's some words they don't want and a couple they're going to shift. So they don't want pics in there. I don't think we have pics in as default anymore, but we can search up here and see. Yeah, pics doesn't exist in the DAAD vocabulary anymore. Ascend and descend, they do. So we want to delete those. So I think they're in the movement verbs. So we have descend here, which was verb 11. We can delete. And we have ascend. We can do the same there. There's always a few default words in the vocabulary list that you might want to go through and delete, and just free up a tiny bit of space in the adventure for other more exciting purposes. So Gilsoft have inserted the word put with the same number and the same meaning as drop, and look is the same as examine. Look and examine is always the one that used to annoy me as being the same thing. I think looking at something and examining something is quite different. So we want these two to have their same meanings. First of all, delete put and look and reinsert them as verbs. So we can go down to put, and so let's go to verbs. Our last verb here is 31, so we can actually just edit that and make that 32. And that adds it to the bottom of the list as a separate word now from drop. And we can do the same with look and examine. We can just bump this one up to be 33. Okay, So that sorted those ones out. Two new verbs are needed, open and shut, and we'll also insert close as a synonym for shut. So let's add a word. We're in verbs, so it'll automatically add it as a verb. So we want open, and then we want to add plus because we want to add another one, and we're going to add shut, and we're going to add plus because we want a synonym of close, and we're going to make that 35 so it's the same as shut, and we're just going to add. So they should be at the bottom now, both 35. Shut and close are the same word. To make life easier, insert the letter 9 as an abbreviation of quit. I think it must be a typo for Q for quit, and that's already in our default vocabulary. G for get, so we can add a word, and we're going to add G, and we're going to make that 20. I'm going to add plus because there's also RS for RAM save, RL for RAM load. RAM save and RAM load are here, so that's 28 is RS, that needs to be 28. Add plus, I'm going to have RL for RAM load, and that's going to be 29. Add. Okay, that's the vocabulary done. Now to insert first of all the entries allowing movement into location 2. So on the visual editor, this is location 1. Location 2 was our armory, so that's to go south into the armory. To indicate the door is open, we're going to use flag 11. So if we go into our flag defined editor, so 11 isn't used, but it's not really ever advised to use the ones down the bottom end because they may be used for system flags later on with DAAD. So the advice really is to start at the top and work your way down. So first flag of 255 and then work your way down from there. So might swap this round to be 255 and not flag 11. It says here all user flags are 11 to 28 and 60 to 255. So that advice is true, but I do know there was a PAWS event that I automatically converted into DAAD which didn't work, and that was because some of the flags were being used elsewhere internally. So when the player types open door, we'll set flag 11. This will give it value 255. So we need to go into the response table, which is text editor. We're going to jump down to process 5, which is the equivalent of the response table. And we're going to add in an entry. First entry we're going to put in is when the player tries to go south when the door is closed. So we're going to go south, underscore, and then we need to check where we're at. So are we at location 1, or we did use the define, so we can have L courtyard. Then if so, 0 flag 255 we're going to be using. Let's make this easier for ourselves. Let's leave that there for a second and go over to defines, and we're going to add a new define in, which is going to be F door open, and we're going to make that 255. It's going to be much easier to refer to it in the text editor later on. So let's go back to process 5. So we have 0 F door, that's at the bottom of our list there, door open. we now want mess 5, and this is where we could just use an inline message, mess 0 and mess 1. So mess, unlike message, doesn't add a new line on the end, so this will all become one complete sentence when it's printed out. And then we're going to have a done at the end to complete that action. It says, note says the difference between mess and message. Mess prints a message after will appear on the same line, whereas message always has a carriage return after it and everything will appear on the next line. So at location 1, the player tries to go south and the flag is 0, which is whether the door's open. PAWS will respond, or DAAD in this case will respond by printing you can't, the door is closed. So the next section is darkness and light. Let's just go and test that. So test adventure, going to be here, going to try and go south, and it says you can't, the door is closed, which is exactly what we want to happen. So he says, as I said earlier, the armory will be dark when you enter it unless you're not carrying a source of light. Darkness is controlled with flag 0, and if the flag is not 0, has a value of anything other than 0, the location the player is in will be in the dark. We will need 2 entries in response to allow for this when we move into and out of location 2. So we need to go back to the response table, which is 5, and we're going to go back to the top because we need to add the movement directions right at the top of the list because they'll automatically be processed later on, so we want our entries to fire before any automatic processing takes place. So again, we want another south, and we're going to want at 1, not 0, and this is going to be the flag we just created. So if the door is open, we can go to 2, we can set 0, and then has a desk which has changed, as we discovered in the last adventure, to now have a parameter to it. So if you say desk 0, it will redescribe location 0. If you say desk 20, it will describe location 20. Last time around we just did a restart, which will automatically give the description of the room, and if it's light or dark, it will tell us whether it's light or dark. And I think here actually we should set F dark, which is flag 0. That has a define for it to make it easier to remember what this is doing. And then equally, as we come out of the room, if we're going north, and this is going to be at 2, and again we should be using the defines we created. So let's say at the armory, and I'm going to change that to be the courtyard, and I'm going to change that one to be L armory. Just helps to comment the code doing it this way as to what everything's actually doing. So next we want not 0, and again we're going to check whether that door's open or not because we can't walk through it if it's closed. Not 0, door open. We want to clear the dark flag, so clear F dark. We're going to go to 1, go to L courtyard, which is the same thing, and again we're going to restart instead of using describe. Okay, so it says note that set gives any flag the value of 255, which is the maximum number you can give to any of the flags, and that will So if it is 255, it's obviously not 0, and we can check for 0 if the flag is at 0, so we can set and clear those flags to give the values of 0 or 255. Equally, we can use values in between if we need to be more precise about things. So as you may have realised, this action can be done in both locations 1 and 2. Here we allow for this in our entries. Here is the entry you'll require, plus that for closing the door again. So we need to be able to open the door and close the door to go between the two locations. So here we're going to insert open door, okay, we can't open door because we haven't got door in our vocabulary yet, so let's jump back to vocabulary, jump back to nouns. I'm going to add a word, door, and then come back to our text editor, jump back down to section 5, which is where we're working, and we're going to now change that to door, which we do have. So now it says at greater than, we're going to go L courtyard. So we want to check we're at a location greater than 1, or of the courtyard. Then we want at lower than, no, that's not, sorry, at greater than location. Did we use intro? We didn't use intro, so it has to say 0. So 0 is actually the introduction screen for the game. So we want to check that we're higher than that, so at 1 or 2, and lower than 3. I can't remember what 3 is, so we'll just stick with the values we have here. Then we want to go 0, and this is checking whether the door's open or closed, so we'll use that same flag we created. Then we've got the messages that we have created, so this is mess 3, any key, so it's going to pause and wait for the player to press any key. Then we're going to set that flag, so we're going to say the door is open. Set door open, and it says describe. Again, we're just going to do a restart. So then we want to be able to shut the door. So we have got shut in there, and we now have door in there. So shut door. And again, we want to see where we are. Are we at greater than 0 and at lower than location 3? We want to check the value of that flag. Is the door actually already open or closed? Not 0. F door open. So we want message 4 followed by any key, wonder why he's using mess here instead of message. I'm going to clear flag 11. And then we're going to restart. If we're using mess, there's a chance that any key is going to end up on the same line. I'm just going to use message here. Not going to make a huge difference, I don't think. So note the action clears the flag to 0. The above entries we use at greater than, at lower than, so if the player is greater than location 0 or less than location 3, we can only be at locations 1 or 2, so that saves checking for each of those locations individually. Now you may have thought if the door is closed and you are in the armory, you will not be able to go north. You may have already worked out the entry we will therefore need, which is north. So let's do that under the other location ones. In fact, we'll do that at the top here. So let's go north. So obviously we can open and close that door at both of those locations. So if we've gone in the armory, we've closed the door, we shouldn't be able to go north. So we need to check if we're at, and this time L armory. So we want to check the value of that door flag, F door open. Then we want mess 5, mess 0, and mess 1, and then we're done. So it says you will see I've included a key press and the location redescribes when you open and shut the door. This is because we want to alter the word that will appear at the end of locations 1 or 2 to indicate the door is open or shut. This is dealt with in process table 1 or in DAAD process table 3. So switch to this table. We can actually just scroll up because it's literally just up here. In PAWS you would have had to go out of one process and back into another one. So we now need 4 entries, and these are using the asterisks, which meant in PAWS they would have been added to the very top of the process table rather than further down. So our responses are, it says we want to insert the appropriate entries there scanned by PAWS before the 2 entries which print the object lists on the game, on the screen. There's only 1 entry that does that now, and that's here. The 4 entries are, so need to go underscore, underscore. Now we want to see if we're at 1 and the door open flag is 0, then we want to print message 1 followed by, if we're at 1, and I shouldn't be saying at 1, I should be saying at courtyard, so let's change that to L courtyard. And we want to check for not 0 for the door flag, F door open. Then we want to give message 2. So we have mess 2. So these are going to be our messages saying open and closed. Then we want 2 messages. So message 1 and message 2. Present 0, present not 0. Alright, okay, so we're going to be checking if we have object which appears later, which is the lit torch. So if we're in the armory, we know it's dark in there if we haven't got the torch. So we wouldn't want this message to just appear on the screen, because it would say it's dark in the location we're in, and then we suddenly have the word open, which would make no sense at all. So we now need to be checking if we're at the armory. Do we have the lit torch? So I want to check whether the door is open or closed. So if we do have the torch, we want to know whether it's open or closed. So we need to check if the door is open. Door is open, and then we want to give the message to say the door is open. So that's message 1, and pretty similar to this. I'm just going to copy and paste those two. If we're at the armory present and the door is not 0, then we want to change our message to be message 2, saying the door is closed or open. So after these, you press P, you'll see the entries are being added to the process. Done. We need 2 more entries in response at this point, the first of which will print message 6 if the player tries to go west from the archway, and the second will print message 7 if they try to go north from location 5. So we need to go back into the response table, which we'll just scroll down to 5 here, and we'll continue putting all the movement ones together at the top. So if we try to go west, and we're at location west at location 6, which was the archway, then we need a message to say we can't go. So message B, again, that I think must be where they've scanned the magazine in. I think it's going to be message 6. That looks most like a B, and then we're going to say done, and then we want one more when we try to go north, and we're going to be at, so we try to go north and we're at location 5. What was location 5? 5's the top of the stairs. Try to go north from location 5. Okay. There wasn't an exit north, location 5. I thought we weren't able to go north from location 1, but we'll follow what they say. Okay, let's continue with what they're saying and just see when we're testing whether that's actually a typo, and that should have been location 1, in which case we'll change it. So at that was L, top of stairs, then we want message 7, and we're done. Okay, now test the adventure again. In location 1, you'll see the text has been replaced with the word closed. So let's go to test adventure, any key, and there we have the description here, and right at the end it says to the south of the door to the armory, which is closed. If we try to go south from there, it says you can't, the door is closed. So now if we try to open the door, it now tells us the door is open, which is what we want. And you can move south. It says, hang on though, didn't we set it to the armory would be dark when we enter? So let's go south, and we're in the armory. How come it's light? And it says the answer is to type in I for inventory. And it tells us we have a pocket torch, and the pocket torch is lit. This is object 0 and is thus a source of light. PAWS has set it to be carried at the start of the adventure, and DAAD continues that same tradition that object 0 is always a source of light, and again you always carry it at the start of the adventure. And that brings us neatly or nicely to the next section of the adventure, objects. So playing around with the adventure for a while, inputting open, shut or closed door. So let's try shut door. Okay, so shut door hasn't worked because it's still saying the door is open. So after that it says to quit, and go back to the object table. So we can jump across to objects, and in a moment we'll go back and look in the text editor as to why that wasn't working. So after amending object 0 as below, insert the other 7 objects. Note when amending object 0, you don't need to delete everything to start again. Delete the word lit after the space in the torch and the full stop. Then use the arrow left key to place the cursor after the T of pocket. Delete everything to the left and type a lit. So it reads as below. A lit torch. So we go to object 0 and we're just going to call that torch for us to be able to identify it easier. And so it says a pocket torch lit. We want to delete that bit there, and we want to delete the word pocket, and we want it to say a lit torch. Okay, so that is fine, it's still carried. So next we want to add an unlit torch, a helmet, a coat of chainmail, a sword, a saddle, a bridle, a horse. After inserting these objects, we need to insert nouns in the vocabulary and afterwards amend the object word weight and initially at tables so we can manipulate the objects. To save space, I've lifted the nouns to be inserted, an object to weight and initially at tables as they should appear in your database. So, first one here, the noun is torch, that's already in place. The next one is, so this is not created. We need to change its location now to be not created. And then we want to, the next one is at location 5. So at location 5, we want to add a new object, torch, and this is unlit. So this is just so we can tell the difference between the two. And it's going to be called an unlit torch. Again, it's going to be called torch. It weighs 1, it's at location 1, so we add that in, and the weight is by default 1 anyway. On a helmet, which is not created, and the object weighs 1, you don't have to worry about creating the object. Oh, sorry, this is the noun numbers. This will just happen automatically for us. We don't need to worry about creating those or putting them in the right place. So the helmet is not created, so let's add another one here for not created objects. We're going to call it a helmet. Helmet. And a helmet. So we're going to add that on here. It doesn't say anything about being wearable, but I think that maybe that's going to come later, because I would think a helmet you're going to be able to wear. Object weighs 1, which is the same, it's not created. We now have a coat which is not created, and the coat is wearable. I would have thought the helmet would be wearable as well, but so this is not created either. Let's create a coat and give it a noun of coat, and we're going to tick wearable because it's got a WR here. Location 2 should be a sword. Location 2 is our armory. So let's create a sword there. And we're going to add that in. We have a saddle at location 4. Location 4 is the tack room, which is where you would expect to find a saddle. There's a bridle. This is also at location 4. There's going to be an awful lot of things to carry if we have to carry all of these objects. We're going to use that as a define. And you'll just notice here when we tick use as define, it tells us what that define label is going to be. So when we're writing the text editor, we can just put in O bridle for that particular object without having to remember what object number it is. And so we're going to add, we need to give it a noun, otherwise we can't enter it into the game. So bridle. And finally we have a horse at location 3. So 3 is in the courtyard. We're going to have a horse in the courtyard. We're going to call that a horse. And this is going to have a ridiculously high weight, I suspect because they don't want you to pick it up and carry it, which would just be ridiculous. Okay, so that's our objects. Only 3 of the objects' weights tables need amending. We can wear the helmet and chainmail coat, so the attribute for each, the last number needs to be altered to 2 where remove. So the helmet should be wearable. They didn't list that in the listing, so let's just change that now to be wearable. So where were we? Helmet and the chainmail need to be wearable. 2 amends, we don't need to worry about quite how you used to amend it in PAWS. As we would normally not be able to pick up a horse, we'll amend its weight, 3rd number, to 20, which we had up here. And that is sorted. Special locations. PAWS and DAAD has 4 special locations where objects are not created, which is number 252, worn 253, carried 254, and in the present location 255. The object word table needs to be amended with a noun for each of those. We don't need to do that, that's happened automatically as we've entered the words in here, and we'll check that in a minute. The underline symbol being where you would normally insert an adjective. So what we're talking about is in the text editor. If we jump down to the object section, here, this is the objects we've created, and at the end is the adjectives for each of those objects. So the underscore here, if you wanted it to be a red torch, you'd have torch red, helmet gold, etc. We're not going to differentiate between the lit and the unlit torch. This is because only one torch is present in the adventure game at any one time. So literally when we turn a torch on or off, we just swap them over between the lit one and the unlit one, so we're not carrying object 0 if we turn the torch off. And it says that brings us to the end of my instalment of my PAWS mini adventure programming article. You should now insert a blank tape into your data recorder or a blank formatted disk into your disk drive and select Option S from the main menu to save your database. You won't need to do that here, but you can go up to the top and click on Save here, and you can save a folder with all the information so far in your adventure, and you can load that back in later on. Generally the data will persist in your tab on your browser indefinitely. Just in case for any reason that doesn't happen, it's always worth saving at the end of a session so you've got that data that you can load back in later on. So let's just go back and have a look at why it wasn't working with the... What were we trying to do? We were trying to close the door when we're in the armory. So it was greater than or lower than. Should be able to open or shut the door. Let's see if we can open and shut the door from the courtyard. We didn't even try that. Open door. Tells us the door is open. Now we want to shut door. So shut doesn't work at all in any location. So let's jump down to process 5 and have a look what we've done wrong in shut door. So we want to check we're at those locations, which are both the same. We check that the flag open door is not 0. So if we've opened the door, it should set the flag to be 255. If we're at that location and it's not 0, which it shouldn't be, we should get message for any key clear the flag. So we haven't, of course, yes, that's what we haven't done. I didn't use flag 11, I used 255, and I should actually have used a define for that, which is stopping us from opening and closing that. Okay, let's go back to test adventure. In the courtyard, we want to be able to open door, and we want to be able to close door. And the door is open, door is closed. So let's open door again. Then we want to go south. It should be dark now. It's too dark to see anything. And we know we put in that bit in the process 3 saying that if the torch isn't present, or if it is present, then we say the message door is open or door is closed. But with the torch isn't present because we've changed our objects now. So if we look in our inventory, we actually have with us nothing. We shouldn't have nothing. So let's go to debug and look at our objects. Unlit torch I've put at the top of this. Oh no, we haven't picked it up, have we? It was at location 5. I thought we were carrying it. So let's go north. Can't go north. South. North. Okay, so location 5 is the top of the stairs, and we can't go to the top of the stairs. Try to go north, so we can't go in that direction. So we can't get to the torch yet. Again, I still think if we try going north, this is where the sentry should be saying we're not allowed to go north. But we will look at that in the future video and see whether that's a problem in the magazine or something we've done wrong here. So that wraps up this installment, and I'll see you in the next video for the next installment.